Big question here on Monday, February 10th. About 2 weeks to go until Major League Soccer kicks off their 2025 season. There's been a flurry of transfers, some preseason drama. Teams can actually trade players for money, and there's an addition of a 30th team. So already some storylines cooking up. Jason, what are your top three intriguing topics moving into the 2025 MLS season?
With 30 teams now, it's almost impossible to narrow this down to three, Robert. I mean, let before I go into my top three, I'm gonna give you a top three, and I'm gonna count them down, and maybe you can chime in with yours as well. But I'm just going to look through the entire list of clubs before we play the game. So it's going to be alphabetical, right, in terms of the standings. Atlanta United's in first place. Well, that's because they have an A. You could figure out pretty interesting storyline, I think, for every club. We'll come back to Atlanta. I'll save them. Charlotte. They just signed Wilfred Zaha. They got Patrick Aijamang, and we're going to see if he can explode in MLS this year. Chicago, Greg Berhalter, rebuilding. Lots of things happening there. FC Cincinnati, we've already talked about Lucho Acosta and the saga that is that. Columbus, I'm going to save them too. DC United, they're in flux. They've sold players and brought players in and traded players away. There's always something there. Inter Miami, need I say anything? They basically are a telenovela out of Miami these days. Montreal's always messy, always
Random.
Dramatic,
Very random.
always stuff going on.
If you were to label a team most random in MLS, would it be Montreal?
It might be Montreal, absolutely. Nashville, we're going to see if BJ with some new players and a new look can improve what they were. We've got the Revs. They sent out 14 players, and they brought in 14 players. They had 13. They brought in 14. They overhauled. If anybody overhauled, it is the New England Revolution.
There's been a few teams that have complete retooling.
New York City FC, rather. New head coach. They're not spending much, so they're not following a CFG kind of big spender model right now. The Red Bulls are the defending Eastern Conference champions. They sold John Tolkien. They brought in Eric Choupo-Moting for some reason nobody can figure out. Orlando is they've got moves, right? They feel like a sleeping Philadelphia. Need I say anything? Mike Thomas says, "LOL, we suck." At least you have a Super Bowl championship to hang your hat on these days. Yep. If you are from Philadelphia, Toronto's messy. Toronto's dramatic. There's always something going on there. I even got to the West. Austin spending big money. Colorado with trades. Cudi Pietro and making moves. FC Dallas has rebuilt and sent away two big names. The Houston Dynamo, no Ache. They just traded for Jack McGlynn. The LA Galaxy, defending champions, had to send away their starting center forward and have an injured player on their roster. They didn't DNI or whatever that word is, season-ending injury list for Ricky Push. They're leaving him on the roster. He's taking up a spot, despite that, in fact, he can't play because they want him to be around the team, and he can't otherwise be around the team. Minnesota United, Portland's, Real Salt, there's stories everywhere. But I think my top three, Atlanta United and the spending that they just did. They set a new transfer record for Latte Lath. They brought back Miguel Almiron for $10 million. They're pushing all of their chips into the middle. And while I think that's a club that could easily go back out and spend millions of dollars again in a couple years, this is MLS. You can't do this every single season. You can't do it every offseason. You're limited in what you can do. They're betting on a Middlesbrough player who scored goals in that division, but hasn't really ever been more than that. That's maybe a transfers. Maybe they see the profile. And again, a 30-year-old Miguel Almiron, who we haven't seen a lot from at Newcastle United. So I have to make that number one. They have the big spending Uncle Arthur. They've got the top executive in MLS, maybe in MLS history, in Garth Lagerwey. And they've got the guy he worked with in Seattle to build those teams, and the guy who built Inter Miami and Chris Henderson. I'm sorry. They also have they have an MLS Cup winning head coach now in Ronnie Dyla. So Atlanta feels like they've done everything right. Can they put it together in a short turnaround with all those things happening and put together a championship winning team? I think that would be number one. Number two, the Columbus Crew. I mean, somebody comes in and offers you the money that they got for Cucho Hernandez, you say, sure, we'll sell Cucho Hernandez. What you can't say no in this league. And now we know that Christian Ramirez is an LA Galaxy player replacing Dejan Joveljic, I suppose is the way to think about that, at a much lower price tag because Joveljic had graduated from his U22 contract and was hitting the budget in a much bigger way. but Wilfred Nancy gives you confidence, right? Wilfred Nancy is a guy you will always believe is capable of putting a winning team on the field, sort of regardless of what his pieces are, based on his history in Columbus. And yeah, he's had Cucho Hernandez, and now he has to replace that. Can Diego Rossi take on more of the load? I guess is a big question. I mean, you tell me, Rob, do you have a lot of confidence? Does Columbus look like a team that's going to slide way down the table, or because of the Nancy factor and because of their institutional stability on some level, do you just go, hey, they should be fine?
Well, just keeping their coach, keeping Wilfred Nancy a win, because at the end of the season, they had been absolutely amazing last year, and the coaching was evident that they were so good, part and parcel of Nancy. So they kept him. So minor win there already for Columbus. Can they recreate what they did last year? I think that the machine can be created once again, whether or not the sharp end of that machine is functional. I feel like they may have the slip, especially at the first half of the season. I think it'll take some time. I think it might be a sluggish start to the season for Columbus. Maybe where they find somebody, or through the process of, working through their squad, someone stands out as that goal scorer. But it might be a tough opening a month or so until they find their goal scorer in Columbus.
Yeah, that I think that's probably fair, right? And we maybe need to hold off judgment of Columbus, and that's probably true of every team, right? The beginning of the season is always very messy in Major League Soccer.
For a concise answer, I think eventually they will slide, but I don't think it'll be like a, top to bottom slide.
Okay. All right. At number 3 on my list is San Diego. I actually didn't count them down. I counted them up because I think Atlanta's the biggest story. But San Diego FC, obviously, look, again, there are stories everywhere. San Jose didn't even get to them. Bruce Arena, how, is he still capable of putting a winning team on the field in Major League Soccer after what happened in New England? He got a bunch of players from New England into his squad. He brought some veterans in that he certainly knows. Joseph Martinez is there. Chicho Arango is there. We mentioned the potential move for Lucho Acosta. What would that mean for San Jose, who has not been relevant in Major League Soccer for quite some time? They still have a penny-pinching owner. But if anybody can figure a way to win with a penny-pinching owner, it's Bruce Arena. But I'm going to say San Diego because I'm always going to have my head turned by an MLS expansion franchise in their first season. Now, is San Diego going to be more St. Louis in their first year, more Austin in their first year, or are they going to be more Charlotte in their first year? Or are they going to be more, Minnesota United in their first year, which was a disaster, right? I think that there are some players that I like in this team. Obviously, the Luca De La Torre thing is fascinating, right? Not just because of what he might be able to do to help San Diego FC in a Major League Soccer, but because he is a national team player who has now chosen to leave Major League or leave Europe, rather, go to Major League Soccer, and people will demote him because of that. So can he play at a level that will keep him in the national team picture is a question. Obviously, Chucky Lozano, the Mexican star, who, has had a kind of a snake bit career. I mean, he's had some good moments, but he was supposed to be more than he ended up being, right? And that happens to a lot of Mexican players. So they
have a good run and then get kind of sidelined by expectations.
He bursts onto the scene. He gets the move to Europe to PSV back in 2017. He goes to Napoli, and he has a decent run at Napoli. He wasn't a bad player at Napoli, and they won a Scudetto, I think, while he was there, and they went to the quarterfinals of Champions. So he had some moments, but I think Mexican fans would say at 29, Tuca Lozano shouldn't be coming back to North America and playing in MLS in particular, right? Hey, if you're going to play in North America, play in Mexico. But this is obviously a choice he's made, and it's sort of, maybe you could argue it's similar to the Carlos Vela choice, right? I don't know if this is about personal reasons. Playing in San Diego keeps him very close to Mexico. He's not from Tijuana or anything. He's from farther away, but it's still culturally, I'm sure, very comfortable for him. And he gets to be the centerpiece of a club in a city that, we'll see, could be the next big success story in MLS when it comes to expansion.
Looking at, thank you for asking, but my three are maybe a little bit. You touched on them a little bit, but I feel like the top story, obviously, headlining Atlanta. It's been an uncomfortable few years for them. Their whole setup there, they got the big stadium, the big budget. They want to be the commanding force. They clearly haven't been for a couple of years. So, they've done all the right things to put themselves in that position. They've got the coach and they got the players. They seem to be a total attitude shift with that upswing at the end of the year last year. So, will they return to the summit of MLS will be a storyline to follow up with. Can San Jose get good with good coaching and Bruce Arena? He's bringing in some interesting players. He's obviously good at the MLS thing. Can San Jose be a relevant team once again under Bruce Arena? I think is something keeping an eye on. And basically, just going into this season, this will be the first year, from start to finish that I will be truly invested in doing this show with you. So it's been a few years since I covered an MLS season front to back all the way through. So I'm interested in finding more teams that I have an investment in, just that tickle my fancy. Like I covered Chicago Fire for a few years. I lived there for a few years, so I know Fire a little bit. I know some players there, and fans, just stakeholders or people involved in the team. Columbus a little bit. One of my very best friends, Columbus, been down there a few times, but I want to talk to more people from more fan groups to know more teams around the league and get a little bit of more of a direct connection to more teams around the league. So the third one is, I'm going to be a little selfish, find myself a team that is interesting beyond the ones here just in my immediate Midwestern area. And
Okay.
and one just kind of randomly off the cuff you touched off, I want to see if Charlotte will be good.
Okay.
I do want to see if they'll be good because they're a new team. Haven't really invested any time. I've seen a couple videos of they had some big celebrations and a couple nice moments. Will the addition of Zaha and the young American Ajamang, will they put Columbus, or not Columbus, Charlotte into the relevant echelon of Major League Soccer? And I'm curious to see that. Or will another team, really engage me as we venture into our first Major League Soccer campaign together here, Jason?
Yeah, that should be interesting. I mean, Charlotte, they blew the doors off in terms of attendance and the vibes and the atmosphere there in Charlotte. I think we have this kind of push-pull when it comes to soccer stadiums in this country or places where we play soccer. And that's, hey, we want our own buildings. Don't want to be playing in NFL venues. But then you see a city that responds to their team the way that, say, Atlanta has, or the way that Seattle did back in '09, or the way that Charlotte has. And you're like, oh, okay, well, they should be playing there because they can get 70,000 people out to watch their team. I don't know that they're aiming for 70,000 every game, but it will be interesting to see if they can put a truly competitive team on the field. And I don't just mean making the playoffs. I mean actually being a contender, what that might mean for the explosion of interest in Charlotte and how that translates into, sort of the wider impact of soccer in that part of the country.
We shall see. Thank you, everyone, for tuning in, contributing to the chat. Good episode here on a chilly Monday. If you haven't already, subscribe to the channel, Morning Kick Around on YouTube. Help us get closer to that 1,000 subscriber mark. Follow along on social media at mkickaround, X, Instagram, Blue Sky. Write us a note, morningkickaround@gmail.com. We have to dig into some of those, get to know your districts, and maybe a couple other guests that have written into our Gmail. Get a hold of them. Or if you want to, support the show directly, ko-fi.com/morningkickaround. Buy us a coffee or maybe even more. ko-fi.com/morningkickaround.
And a bagel. That's what you do. No.
Extra cream cheese. All right. Until Wednesday morning, everybody, please enjoy your soccer. Your morning has been kicked.